Okay, the podcast set up downtown. We got motion. What's the idea? People, the conversation's open. Lee Andrews Group, the firm, yeah, we here now. Let's talk about great ideas. Have a sit down. Welcome to the podcast. The Idea People.
Hello and welcome to the Idea People at Lee Andrews Group. Lee Andrews Group is an award-winning communications firm located in the vibrant heart of downtown Los Angeles. Each and every episode, we hope to feature industry newsmakers, trends, and an assortment of ideas that might get you thinking. Hello, everybody. I'm Rick Garcia. I am so excited about today's guest. Mary Hayashi is an award-winning author and champion of healthcare and equality. She began her career in public advocacy for women's health and later served 6 years as California State Assembly member, covering cities like Alameda, Oakland, Pleasanton, Fremont, Hayward, and Berkeley. Mary is releasing her latest book, Women in Politics, which you'll be able to find on October 25th. Mary, thank you so much for being here on the Idea People at Lee Andrews Group. So kind of you to come in. What inspired you to write this book, Women in Politics?
Thank you, Rick. It's so great to be here. And it's great to sit with such a legend who really has, done incredible work in Southern California, and just your contribution to the journalism and the field of journalism and what you've done is incredible. So I'm really honored to be part of it, and thank you for the kind introduction. I know that you guys also work with my good friend Daryl Steinberg, who championed mental health, and he really is one of the people that mentored me to get into politics, because I got into mental health and women's health advocacy work because I lost my older sister to suicide when she was 17, and my family just really didn't know how to deal with it. And so when I got older, after I finished school, I really wanted to make a difference in mental health advocacy and just awareness and letting people know that it's okay to seek help. It's okay to say that it's, you have a problem. And Daryl, serving as the state legislator at the time when I met him, he's the one who sort of opened my eyes. And I thought, well, I could really do what he's doing, and I could really make a difference for a lot of people out there. This is my second book, and it includes about 18 women leaders in politics. And I interviewed them, and I also reviewed about 80 literature out there that exist around women in politics and campaigns and women in government. And so it's been an incredible 2 years. This project has sort of now come together, and I'm really excited about it. At the same time, I was just really struck by how women, and I was a woman legislator, but how women are just so different in terms of how we see change, how we want to affect change, how we why we serve in government and why we want to run for office. I mean, it really sort of confirmed all the studies out there, but it really taught me, the women who I interviewed really taught me that we really need to get more women elected. So that's what the book is about, and I'm really excited to talk to you about it today.
What do you think kept women initially from entering the field? Was it family? Was it, that sounds a little too boring to me, to this point now where we have a lot of women who are in such important places now in our government?
So, we don't have the 50 parity yet. We don't have the political parity in the United States, but studies have shown that when women run for office, they win, at about same rate as men. The problem is the entry, getting women to run for public office. And, there are many barriers and factors, of course. But in my book, I try to break them down to sort of three different groups. Ambition gap, meaning that we don't really get encouraged or when women are interested in politics or becoming leaders, that people don't really see us as leaders or think that we should run. A lot of women get discouraged from running for office, whereas men, they're encouraged. Men often self-nominate, whereas women have to be asked to run. The second barrier that I try to talk about is the qualification gap. There's this really great study that showed that men would apply for a job even if he doesn't meet the qualification of all the required background of a position. If they met 50, 60%, they would apply for that job. Whereas women would not apply unless she met 100% of that qualifications. And same thing here with politics. Women feel that they're not qualified when they are. Finally, what I like to call a likability double standard. And, women are expected to be likable. We have to be likable and we have to be qualified to run for people to think that we're credible candidates. Donald Trump did not have to, he didn't have to be liked or qualified. But Hillary Clinton, she wasn't she was often said, very cold, not likable, but she was extremely qualified. For women, we kind of have to have that sort of likability factor as well. So those double standards are real, and it does have an impact on women's ability to run and win. So those are some of the issues that I try to talk about, and there are ways to get around them, and and we have come a long way, But think about this. I mean, since women started voting, like in California, for example, in 1911, we've only had 192 women who served in the state legislature, and this is out of 4,497 legislators have served in the state of California, and only 192 of them have been women. So we got a long way to go, even though it may seem like, oh, wow, there's a lot of women in office now,
Mary Hayashi is a former California Assembly member and author of the new book, Women in Politics. You cite some very notable women in your book, including Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass and several other influential leaders. What drew you to those people, and why? Why did you pick them out to be a feature in your book?
So this was very a difficult process because this is not a scientific study, obviously, but a lot of the women included in the book are people that I have worked with in the past. So, I have, Senate leader out of Florida and former Senate president out of Minnesota. I have, legislators from Nevada, Washington, Oregon, and other places. But there are women that I've watched over years and have worked with over the years who I've been just incredibly inspired by, because even though the book talks a lot about their struggles and how they overcome them, ultimately it's a collection of inspiring stories of political leadership. And so one of the women who that I interviewed out of Central Valley, Connie Perez, she ran for Congress. She dropped out, and I met her during her congressional race. And she's currently one of the national vice presidents for United Farm Workers. And she talked about how she and her family grew up in a labor camp, and both of her parents worked, in the fields. And she, and she's. She's like, I'm a CPA. I accomplished. I'm an accountant. That's all. I really wanted to have that kind of professional position. But she says she always felt like something was missing, and just really thought about those people living in those labor camps, and so decided to pursue politics. And those are the kinds of stories that I try to look for. And Senator from Florida, Lauren Book, my gosh, she's going to be the president someday because, at age 35, she became not only a state senator from Florida, but she became the caucus leader. And she disclosed, she was very public about this, but, she was abused by her nanny for years. And when she finally disclosed this to her dad, her dad really mentored her and just helped her not only get over that, but run for office and become a leader. And so, everyone who runs for office, obviously, is very special. But I think the women in my book have truly demonstrated just the resilience and the struggles and showed that people can overcome them and still be very successful. And not all women have won in my book. Some have not won. And they move on because, the point is that there isn't just like a one magic moment. It's a continuous sort of progress that we need to make. And it's like that for everybody, who's interviewed in the book.
I mentioned LA Mayor Karen Bass because she was a member of Congress as well. And I would think, at some point you might say, all right, that's a lot of work. And then she winds up in a city that needs a lot of work. She got to roll up her sleeves again. Is it the challenge, do you think, Mary, that that keeps people going and not wanting to just say, okay, I've had enough already, because it's a lot of work. People don't realize the work that's put into being a political leader.
She's a special person and a dear friend. But I think you're right. Everyone who I interviewed, and the studies actually back this up. Women run for office for this very sort of personal reason, and they want to fix something and they want to bring solutions to problem. And that was consistent, not only in the interviews, but all the studies out there that talk about reasons for running. And I'm not saying men don't have, good reasons, but remember what Bill Clinton said about his reason. Like he met JFK, when he went to White House for the first time or something like that and shook his hand with the president and said, oh, I want that job someday, Yeah. So I think men sort of have different reasons, and they're taught to seek leadership and power, and it's normal for them. And similarly, like in business, men tend to start their own business because they want the independence. They want to make more money, or they seek more of a leadership role. Whereas when women start their own business, it's because they want to be flexible and be available for their kids and their family. And so we are sort of trained to think collectively and think about what is good for the collective. And I think you see that with a lot of women, especially with Karen.
I think about my own wife who, if she would have wanted to pursue a career in politics, she would have been smart enough and great enough to do it. I think her fear would have been leaving me at home with the kids. I mean, you have to have a support system, right? If you're going to try to juggle, being a mother, being in politics. I mean, that's a lot of work. You have to have a husband or a partner at home who's willing to clean the dishes and to, change the diapers and do some of that hard work at home.
Right. I don't know if you recall, but Barbara Boxer used to tell this story. And of course, she's, much older than us, but, when she was running for her first race, she went to the Sierra Club interview, I think. And a woman raised her hand and said, if you are here with us, like who's making dinner and doing the dishes at home, and you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised because I was recently asked by a woman at a training. It was like a women candidate training conference. One of the participants asked, can I run for office if I have small children? So this is something that I think, I have a chapter on motherhood, the politics of motherhood. And this is a discussion that's still going on. But look at our, vice president. I mean, her husband, the second gentleman, he seems so comfortable in that role, and he seems to enjoy it. And when you think about like Sarah Palin, and when she was the vice presidential candidate, her husband was mocked by people, and people, I mean, people were very cruel to him. Like, you stay home with the kids, and you're not a real man. I mean, there was just a very mean comments thrown at him, but then decade later we have a female vice president whose spouse just seems to be very happy. Just the way that women can't be what we can't see, men can't be what they can't see. And so I think it's important to have a role model like that. I really love that couple. So
I think that's a great expression, by the way. Mary Hayashi is the author of the new book, Women in Politics. She's joining us on the Idea People. Let's talk about it's not just gender, but culture too. You came from Korea, I think, at the age of 12, so you were a young person who all of a sudden comes to the new world. When did politics enter the equation for you? At what point did you say, "Oh, I have to do this"?
So it was really, when I met Darrell Steinberg, when I moved to Sacramento to marry, my husband. Then we weren't married, but he got a job working in Sacramento, so I moved there, and I met Darrell through colleagues, and the way he advocated for mental health issues and the things that he was able to achieve really inspired me. And so I would have to say that was the moment. And one of my first legislations that I authored was creating Office of Suicide Prevention for the state. So to be able to do things like that as a legislator was just incredibly, just inspiring. But when I first came here, we grew up in Orange County. So... and not at that time anyway, not that many Asian families lived there. And people used to call me Connie because they only knew Connie Chung. And I was flattered by it, because she just seemed really, competent, attractive, and just amazing on television. And but so yeah, we grew up in Orange County, and I come from a family where my parents really valued education for the boys, but not so much for the girls. They thought we should get married, like, before you turn, like, 20, and, and start having children. And that was sort of their concept of success for girls.
I mean, that's almost a barrier in and of itself, right? Family, parents, what door do they open for their kids?
Right. And when I started working in various nonprofit organizations, working with other women's health leaders, and, I was like, I really want to go to college because all my friends are going to college. And I remember when I was, this is my second year at Cal State Long Beach, I signed up for a class. It was a women's studies, women's literature class. And I thought, oh, maybe this is like a class that teaches you to be like a better, like, female, like a mom. And so I took the class. I really didn't know what it was. And I would have to say that was kind of a turning point for me as a young person, reading about feminist Gloria Steinem and, literature like Jane Eyre. And I thought, wow, like, women can have a job, or we could do something. And so I think that was a great class because I never looked back. I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna move up north, I'm gonna finish college, and I want a career. And it sort of, and I got lucky because everything sort of led to Sacramento, and met Darrell and ran for office. But as a politician too, like, just things like, we got to be able to raise money. Like, fundraising is so important. And my parents always taught me, you don't ask money from strangers. And
that's all politics,
and
right?
it's like when I said I was like, they were like, oh, you have to start making these cold calls. And I was like, well, I have to call these people? And they're like, yeah, you have to call them and ask for money. And I said, money?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So, it didn't come natural to me, obviously.
Now, in your book, you mention when you go through the barriers that have been faced, you give names to them. For example, you talk about the imagination barrier. What is that?
Yes. Amanda Hunter from the Barbara Lee Family Foundation. They did some focus groups with voters and asked them to imagine what the President of the United States looked like. And they imagined a white male. So that's the name that's given. We cannot imagine what we could be, and that's a real barrier. And it goes the same way, sometimes voters, all of us have, bias, and they don't see women as leaders because leaders have been traditionally men, white men. So that's what that name's from.
The future of women in politics, and both in California and nationally, do you think we're in a good place? Do you think, I know you mentioned we have a little ways to go, but what makes you optimistic?
The young people.
Yeah.
I didn't get to interview her, but I talked about Congresswoman Stefanik. She's a Republican, young, just superstar out of New York. And, she started a recruitment organization for Republican women. And, some of her colleagues, male colleagues discouraged her from doing it. And she just took them on and did it anyway. And so I just love that example because there's so much of that. And even, I ran, 15 years ago? So much has changed since, the look at the Me Too movement. And I think that women have really, created something that is so valuable for the next generation, to be able to just not question, am I qualified? Can I run for office? And so I think that future generation and younger women are changing the history. They're doing it right now.
Mary Hayashi, former California Assembly member and author of the new book, Women in Politics, joining us on the Idea People. So I had a question in here that I wanted to ask you. It goes back to the personal stuff a little bit and about your husband, who's a judge, and we took it out. And then you were telling me this great story about your husband. Now, he's a judge. This is a cool gig, right? But you talked about he's got this amazing hobby. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. Well, before that, he's amazing because he's a Gemini.
I'm a Leo. Does that say anything for me? Sherrod, what are you?
I'm a Leo.
Yeah. Oh, you are?
Leos
Is that
are
good
the
or bad?
best.
Are we?
Yes.
I tell that to my wife all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
She rolls her eyes, but okay.
But he's just, he's just so laid back and just so confident. And when I first met him, he was a nonprofit civil rights lawyer, and has had amazing career.
Tell us his name.
Dennis Hayashi.
Dennis Hayashi, if people want to.
A role model. Just truly somebody who's done amazing things for people. So it's really great that he's in this role because we want our judges to have that kind of public interest advocacy background. But he's been, he's a little bit older than I am. And he's not sensitive about that or anything because
we're going to find out. We'll find out.
He looks like my age, and he acts even younger. So he's been collecting records since he was like 10 years old.
Okay.
And he loves the Beatles. And right now, I would say he's got about 30,000 albums. Vinyl record,
Oh my
yes.
gosh. Yeah.
Just in one of, I mean, we have like 3-car garage situation, and one of them is dedicated to his boxes, like his access that we cannot store inside. And there are several hundreds of them. Just,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I don't even know if I have the accurate count, but we're going to have to buy a bigger house soon because...
For all the albums?
Yes.
Yeah.
And, I said to him, I said, have you heard of streaming? And he said, that's, he considers himself like a music critic, so.
What? First of all, tell me the genre A and B. Please tell me he does play them on the record player.
He does.
For you young people, a record player.
Yes,
is something
he does.
You put the disc on this little turntable and it spins around and a needle play. So he does play them. Okay,
he
good for
does
him.
every night.
Yeah. What's his favorite genre? What you mentioned Beatles, so he likes rock and roll. We know that.
When people ask him, people come over, to do some repair or something inside the house, they often ask me, "Oh, are you guys like in a music industry, or do you work for?" It's like, no, it's my husband's collection. And they'll say, "Well, what's his favorite, or what does he like?" His answer is always the same. He likes everything.
Everything.
And he collects everything, like international rap. I mean, everything.
I love that story. In the foreword of your book, Women in Politics, we find the phrase breaking down the barriers to achieve true representation. What is true representation?
That is someday when we don't have to say, "Oh, let's elect more women," and we're just voting based on qualifications.
Or first woman vice president, first
Correct.
fill in the blank.
Now it's just, let's just vote for the best person on the ballot. I think to me, that's true representation. And the book has, I think, well documented, that women bring a lot to the table. We are better as society because women are seeking these leadership positions and working hard to represent them. So, yes.
I love that. And you know what else I love? I love hearing people in general. I mean, you've made it very clear that the women who've influenced your lives, but there have also been men who've influenced your lives. And I think that's important that people hear that, especially men. It's easy for, somebody to get defensive when the feeling is, oh, we're picking on, men in this case, but which you're not. And the fact that I heard I think it was a former U.S. women's national team coach. And again, because my daughters play soccer and they're very good at it, it's important to them. And they're watching, this women's team compete and fighting for equal rights, and they're seeing all these amazing things. Their coach just resigned, and the last coach they had was a woman, and her first comment was, "I don't think we go out and find the best woman for the job. We go out and find the best coach for the job." And there's a good chance it's going to be a woman, right? So, making the point, you don't have to push us into these positions. We're going to earn it. We can do this. We don't necessarily need your help. We just need you to look at us differently.
See, Rick, you're a Leo. That's why you're so cool like this. So there's a chapter in my book.
Well, we have some bad qualities, I'm told. I don't know, but go ahead.
Well, just a little.
Stubborn? Are you stubborn like me?
Well, that's not the worst one. But anyway, we'll get to that later. I have a chapter dedicated to mentoring. And because that is the best way to close the gender gap. And for that chapter, I interviewed Daryl, a man. So many of the women I interviewed had a male mentor, Fiona Ma. I mean, she credits John Burton. And so that is the reality. It takes everyone. And there's another study that worth mentioning here. It's called Messenger Matters. When men talk about gender bias, when you deliver that message to another man, they're more likely to listen to you. And so, yes, we have to work together. And men mentoring women is reality. It's happening everywhere. And almost all women in my book have had a very strong male mentor helping them succeed.
I think about my wife, and she's smaller than me. I'm 6'2", and I look at her and I always say to myself, I haven't told her this, but I said, I always love how she looks up at me. I wonder if she knows how much I I look up to her. It's and that's one of our differences. We're physically different people. It doesn't make one more stronger or one more courageous than the other. And so I hope you had a good time here. I mean, I know
Yes.
I wanted to break bread with you, but I don't like to eat before I conduct an interview, and you were great, and I hope you enjoyed this.
Well, this was great. I need to cut down on my answers because I really wanted this to be more of a dialogue, but I
This
just
was
have
a good
so
dialogue.
much
Sherrod,
to
how long have we
say.
gone so far?
33 minutes.
That's a short podcast,
Okay.
Mary.
Okay,
It
good.
is. Is there something we left out that you want to?
No,
Please
it was
look at your notes.
great.
Tell me if we.
No, this is funny because I was actually looking at this is just something that I was just reading on the plane, and I just had it in front of me. So this was perfect.
Listen, I hope and send me a picture of Dennis's your husband Dennis's all-time favorite album. I would love to see that label and what that looks like. You can only choose one. He can't pick. He can't say 10,000 of the 30,000.
Well, we met Paul McCartney. So.
I mean, like the original. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Did he sign an album or anything?
Of course.
Oh my goodness! That must have been your
course.
husband died and went to heaven on that.
Of
on that
course,
day. Oh, my
yes.
goodness.
It was fun.
Well, listen, thank you for your time and allowing us to learn about your journey and the challenges that women face in the world of politics. Mary's book, Women in Politics, will be available to the public on October 25th. You can follow Mary Hayashi on Facebook at Mary Hayashi CA,
Yes.
California,
Mm-hmm.
on both X, formerly known as Twitter. I wonder when we can stop saying formerly known as Twitter, as well as Instagram and LinkedIn, if you'd like to get some more information. For more information about Lee Andrews Group and the Idea People, you can check out leandrewsgroup.com, and you'll find this podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, and all of those lovely places where you can find your favorite podcast. Mary Hayashi, thank you so much for being on the Idea People.
Thank you, Rick.
Okay, the podcast set up downtown. We got motion. What's the idea, people? The conversation's open. Lee Andrews Group, the firm. Yeah, we here now. Let's talk about great ideas. Have a sit. We on a mission. You get the idea, people. Glad you pulled up. How you doing? Nice to meet you.